Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing a Samson. What was really surprising about this daily is that it was very similar to the last one, and I don't really mean just that maybe we got the same items, but just the overall tone of the daily. There really weren't many restock machines, a lot of it was just down to brutal strength, and because there wasn't enough or a lot of spirit hearts on the ground, I was actually struggling to stay alive at some points, and I really enjoy dailies like this. I think whenever the game basically takes away one aspect of what makes it difficult, then what you get is a challenge. So if you just have a lot of health and a lot of damage, that's pretty easy, but if the only thing that you have is damage and maybe not enough tear rate, then it becomes this play where, sure, you know, you're very powerful and you can kill enemies in 1 or 2 shots, but as soon as you enter a room which maybe has multiple enemies, you really need to carry yourself well, because there's always a chance that something just explodes in your face and deals that last bit of damage, and if you don't have enough health to restore that, then you can be in a very bad position. There was Dark Bomb at some point, and I definitely could have gotten him if I explored the rest of the floor first, and I think that would have been essentially negated all of my heart problems that I've had, but it didn't, and I did enjoy that, because I think I tend to play better under pressure than when you're super powerful or when you have a lot of HP. And I don't know, maybe that's just my impression of it. But I definitely think there's something to that. I know that I'm not the only person who feels like that, but I definitely think it's just something that's to do with pressure. Whenever you feel like the last mistake or one mistake can end up costing you the run, then you just automatically go in that dodge mode where you're really careful about what you're going to do. Maybe you will let your familiars do more of the work for you, so maybe you don't walk into the direction of the enemy or where you will be in danger, and because of that, those little plays maybe add a bit onto your overall time and you're just a bit slower, but you're much safer, and that's something that you don't do when you have a lot of HP and you're trying to catch boss rush or hush or whatever. So a very interesting daily, and you can see that up until this point we didn't really get that many solid items. I would say that basically what we got as far as DPS goes was really defined this early on. We got Judas's Shadow, so that allowed us to respawn, and now we are Dark Judas. This is pretty good, but we also got the Mark and we got the Lost Vessel, I believe, and the Lost Vessel is great because combined with all of that, that means essentially we can respawn the Dark Judas and immediately trigger it, so we're flying and there's a chance for us to enter that shield mode, and where we have a shield on, we can just kind of walk into enemies and not worry about anything else. But we are left in a very vulnerable position, so even though we do get health by picking up every other item, I did make a little bit of a mistake here, and my mistake was I had I think I had four full red hearts, and I decided to take another heart, thinking that maybe by any chance that there will be a devil deal which will actually contain 4 items, although that's very rare, and what I'll be able to do is just take them all if I have an additional heart. And of course, what ended up happening was that it had 3, but the problem was that all those 3 in together cost 4 hearts, which means that I had 1 red heart remaining, and obviously that would have been very useful at this point in time because I would be able to use it with the Ivy bag, but because I picked it up prior to that, I then sacrificed myself to the sacrifice gods. I got revived without that red heart, so I wasn't actually able to take advantage of the Ivy bag. So even though we have it, and I would still much more gladly have this active item as opposed to any other one, or at least most other ones, I was still left in a position where I couldn't take a great advantage of it. And obviously what would have been great would be so that I would have 1 red health, I would be able to play it essentially as many times as I would like, and what would be even better is then I would have that red health to trade away for Dark Bomb when the option arises, and of course I would still have enough money to kind of get to that 99-cent limit and just get some Schwepp bonus going. It was, it's that interesting, I would say, not decision, but it's an interesting way to think about a game whenever you have something that you know would work better if you have red health, because everything at this point now revolved around me trying to find red health, because I had so many items, or at least a few items, which worked with Ivy Bag, besides just having Ivy Bag so I can get the coins, but also with Purity. I just wanted to find some red health and I would do anything to it, and I really thought I'm gonna get it later on, and I did get it in Womb 1 when I played Devil Beggar, just regular Beggar, but I really thought it was gonna come up later, so I just started taking every pill that I could, and I just tried to take essentially every opportunity that I would imagine could lead me to that. I even thought of picking up an Algius Room because that would allow me to play a potential Blood Bang, and if I played the Blood Bang, there's a chance that I would get the Blood Bag, and of course that would give me that red health that I so desperately need. But that didn't really occur, or at least I didn't have a chance to do that, so I was still forced in this decision where, what do I do now? So definitely I want to use the Ivy Bag, because the more I use it, the more damage I'm gonna have, and I'm just gonna be able to deal with rooms more efficiently. But if I don't have any more Spirit Hearts and get them later, then I'm gonna be left in a very odd position where I maybe get through Harsh with 3 or 4 Spirit Hearts in total, and that's definitely enough to kill him, but there's always that chance that you really don't want to be at that low of an HP whenever you fight him. And it just reinforced that tense feeling inside me where I felt like I had to play really super well in order not to die. And even though I have 5.5 Spirit Hearts here, which is not that bad, and I think I feel comfortable fighting Harsh with this particular loadout, it's something like 4, maybe 5 Spirit Hearts, I still didn't feel too bad, but there's always that decision, especially here. It just takes one bad room that's gonna hit you 3 times overall, and you're gonna be left with less than 3 hearts and just gonna end up dying to any other nasty room that might occur. Thankfully, this particular late stage of the game wasn't as difficult as the early stages of the game were, and this is something that comes up so often, and I think a lot of people neglect to maybe mention that, but not just the items that you get, the rooms that you actually face are very important as well, and there's definitely instances where you can get some really, really nasty rooms, especially in that Depths 2, Depths 1 era where there's the skeleton mask and the hearts with skeletons, the Mask of Infamy, those ones, or maybe where you fight a lot of drowned gapers and they spawn more drowned chargers, and all of that, and it really depends on your loadout combined with the fact of which rooms you're facing. So if you have something like I have in this case, I have the Sack of Sacks and I just got a bunch of death cards, you can imagine that with that in mind, it would be much easier for me to deal with a particular kind of room, so the one that had a lot of enemies, as opposed to dealing with enemies which have more HP, for example, but there's less of them in a room overall. So it's just one of those small things that you really don't have control over, and we really can't quantify. We really can't say, oh, it's because of this we lost this run, but it's usually a combination of different things that leads to one bad hit to another, and of course to eventual death. Thankfully I was able to get enough of the Spirit Hearts, and thankfully the Sack of Sacks did help immensely here. I think I got 2 Hierophant cards, so that's 4 hearts in total, and then another heart from the shop. Just put me in a very good spot, and like I said before, I did get one of the breakfasts from the beggar, and I essentially decided to pick it up because no reason. I think it was a bad decision, to be honest, just because now I can't rely on my flight to actually get me through the later stages, so to the cathedral and through the chest. But of course, I was banking that maybe I'll get another HP upgrade later on, and I can then use that to perhaps play the Ivy Bag, or at least get my use out of it. But of course at this point, because I already have very near to 99 cents, I don't have that much of a use for it, except maybe triggering Polar Invincibility, which would have definitely been useful. But thankfully that red heart did pay out, because I did go to the Devil Deal here. I picked up Fair Shot, or Dark Matter, it's called Dark Matter. It gave me some damage up, and now I got my flight back again. But more importantly than flight, it's really about invincibility. That random invincibility can really save your ass in a lot of cases, but it was a bit trolly this game, because if you notice later on, especially, as soon as I enter a room, I beat it. It's usually very tense because I don't have much health, but then it triggers after I've already beat the boss or whoever I'm fighting, which is a bit trolly and a bit unfortunate, but I guess that's just what it's gonna do sometimes. But the shield, when it does come up, it's essentially very useful, because then you immediately don't have to worry about anything. And I always like this not experience, but more like the venture that when you have a shield on, you usually have an orbital, so it's very straightforward about what you want to do. You want to get in there and just deal as much damage with your orbital, but when you don't have it, there's really nothing much to think about. You still have to shoot the enemy with your tears. The only thing you kind of have to watch out for is dodging, and of course when you're kind of in that zone of dodging, even when I have a shield, I tend to start dodging, because I think that a shield shouldn't be like a last resort. Obviously nothing can happen once you have the shield on yourself, but even though I have the shield on, I still try to dodge for whatever reason. I just feel like maybe it improves my confidence or ability, but because you never know when the shield might run out, I think it's always better to be in motion, and if there just is a chance for you to get hit, I think that's a good idea to maybe then stop dodging. But as it turned out, of course I don't do that all the time, it just happens sometimes, and I think it's a funny thought, or at least it's a funny thing that happens. But one thing that also want to mention, maybe point out, is this exact room, and combining the dark ones, which make the room darker, with the little horn, which spawns bombs, which I can't see in the dark because for some reason the game on my screen is all messed up. And I could raise it, but then it washes out the colors and doesn't look nice. So I kind of stick with it. Essentially, it's such a nasty combo. I think any enemy that makes the room darker is immediately one of my least favorite enemies in the game. And that's just obviously because of how I perceive it, but also just messing with the visuals of the game. I can understand to some extent, maybe with light emitting resources, but to make the game darker, that's always struck me as cheap, and I really don't like that mechanic of Isaac. But what can you do? It's not that bad. At least it doesn't happen every time, but when it does happen, it can be quite infuriating, just because I can see what's going on, and then I get hit. But thankfully, I was able to recover from my 2 Spirit Heart situation. I got another one, then I got hit, and then I got another one. So now I have 3, I'm fighting Blue Baby, and I'm feeling pretty comfortable. Thankfully, in this case, the shield did come into the clutch, and I was able to use it quite offensively. And in this case, I didn't really try to dodge, I just tried to get in there and just tried to burst Blue Baby down as fast as possible, and I managed to beat him. And even though it was very close for me, I almost missed boss rush and almost missed Harsh as well, but I did manage to make it in the nick of time, and I finished in the top 27 still. 46,000 points overall, pretty decent score for this daily because I think it was quite a bit of a difficult one. But this daily is one of those dailies where the first 5 people have ridiculously large scores, something like 50,000, 55,000 because they found the breaking way, and once you go down just a bit, like the top 20 already have scores something like I have, so something in the 45,000s, and I think I'll finish in the top 20 for the day, which is again a very good score. And with how Greedbot is designed, I think I'm a 70th place overall for the last 2 months, which is also very inspiring. So all in all, we had a streak of pretty nice dailies, and though maybe 3 days ago it wasn't that good, but at least now the dailies now that we're having are pretty decent. So I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.